Law school teaches you a lot. But it doesn't teach you the things we're going to talk about in today's video.
So the first point we wanted to bring up is that generally speaking, lawyers are very specialized. In law school, you're expected to learn all the basic areas of law, including contracts, criminal, tort, property, and constitutional law, just to name a few. But once you get into practice, you usually end up falling into a more specific niche, for example, real estate, banking, corporate, or litigation. And even within these teams, it can end up being even more specialized. For example, when I was in the banking team in my firm's London office, that team was split up broadly into three main subcategories: funds finance, corporate finance, and leverage finance. And at the last firm that Em worked at, while she was part of the dispute resolution team, she specialized in projects, engineering, and construction disputes, which is quite specific. So the truth of the matter is, while it's important that you gain a broad sense of major legal principles while in law school, once you enter practice, you usually end up becoming a bit more specialized. And just to be clear, this can vary a lot based on the firm that you're in and the practice area of that firm. Very broadly speaking, if you're in a smaller firm or a smaller team within a firm, your job may be less specialized because smaller teams usually require people to do a wider range of things. On the flip side, if you're in a larger firm or a larger team within a firm, there usually ends up being a little bit more specialization simply because the higher headcount means that the firm can afford for people to be a bit more specialized. Keep in mind though that this definitely isn't true across the board, and it really depends on the firm and how it runs its practice. How specialized someone is usually also changes during the course of their career. Junior lawyers tend to be a bit less specialized and have more opportunity to try different things in their practice. But as one increases in seniority, it usually ends up being the case that lawyers end up specializing in one or two major practice areas as their bread and butter practice. So since legal practice ends up being quite specialized, it's a really good idea to try to do internships in as many different teams as possible, or if your firm ends up having a rotation system, to try doing rotations through different departments to see what you end up liking the most. For instance, in my case as an intern, I did seats in corporate, litigation, and finance teams, and as a trainee in my firm, I ended up doing seats in litigation, banking, financial derivatives, and corporate. Having that experience made it easy for me to decide that I wanted to go back to the corporate team as an associate because I liked the work there the most, and I felt like my day-to-day varied the most in that team as opposed to the others.
While law school teaches you the law and how to apply the law to solve problems in different factual scenarios, what law school doesn't teach you is how interpersonal relationships impact practicing as a lawyer in real life. The purpose of law school is to train students in legal analysis. Understandably, for educational purposes, the situations we learn to analyze were always relatively tidy in the sense that we were generally given a static set of facts or information to consider. But once I started working as a lawyer, it didn't take long to realize that real life is not quite so straightforward. Not least because of the complexity of the human element in a job like law, which can impact the advice a lawyer gives their client. For example, a client might come looking for advice on what they can do if a supplier doesn't deliver a shipment of something that the client already paid for. If one were to simply apply the law, the logical and technically correct advice would be to tell the client that they can sue the supplier. But the thing is, the client doesn't exist in a vacuum and may be concerned with preserving its relationship with the supplier because they might have worked together for many years. So, as a lawyer, you would need to take that into account, consider if there's any alternative courses of action which are also practical, and advise the client accordingly. And then, because human relationships are subject to change, it may be that a few months down the road, the client no longer wants to work things out with the supplier because the relationship might have gone south. As a lawyer, you would also then have to take that into account. On top of that, the relationship between lawyers and their clients is also important. One may think that a lawyer's role is just to provide legal expertise by way of competent quality legal advice. While that's obviously a very important part of the job, much of the time it's more than that because as a lawyer, you are in a position of trust. For example, if a client comes to you clearly feeling frustrated or distressed by the situation they're in, which is something I saw a lot of doing disputes work, it might not be the best to go straight into lawyer mode and start firing questions at them to get the information you need. You still need to get the information, of course, but the better approach may be to start off listening and talking to them like real people so that they're comfortable while you also get the information required to do your job. Approaching your work as a lawyer with this in mind also just helps build relationships with clients as well. When I was a junior mid-level associate, the way I saw it was that the cases I worked on could run on for years, so it was clearly preferable to try to have a pleasant working relationship with my clients. And if you're more senior or looking long-term, having good relationships with clients is undoubtedly important for career progression as a lawyer.
So this is one that's probably on everyone's mind already, but is definitely worth a mention. Work-life balance is really hard to figure out once you leave law school and enter practice as a lawyer. Now don't get me wrong, law school is definitely really tough, but the main difference is that you're largely in control of your own schedule when you're still a student. By contrast, when working as a lawyer, because it is a client services profession, your schedule is largely dictated by the needs of your clients. This means that at times, when you have plans but work things come up, you may need to shift your personal plans and cancel things accordingly if things become urgent and need to be done right away. This means that a good amount of the time, even if you had things planned, your personal plans will have to change based on client needs and requirements if things need to be done quickly and urgently. Now, truthfully, I get that this might sound pretty bad, and to be honest, it's not great. The number of times that Em and I have had to reschedule plans with friends and family due to client work becoming urgent or things all of a sudden needing to be done really quickly are honestly too many to count. But I will say that this generally gets a little bit better over time as you become a bit more senior and have a bit more visibility over the matters that you're working on. It's definitely possible to plan a little bit better for things you want to make it to, or find little pockets of time during the day to pop out to the gym or cook yourself something to eat if you're working from home. Many of the lifestyle habits that we have now definitely weren't there, or at least weren't consistent when we first started working. We definitely did a lot of trial and error ourselves over the years to figure out how best to take care of ourselves while we were working. Though it's definitely been tricky at times over the last couple of years, we found that small tricks like meal prepping and trying to capture that couple of hours each day where we can do something for ourselves eventually led us to starting this YouTube channel and wanting to share these tips with you. But it's important to remember that it's never too early or too late to start building these types of habits. So if you're still in law school, we definitely recommend using the flexibility in your schedule to try to dip your toes into building these solid habits by making it to the gym every now and then or cooking yourself a meal from time to time. Because your lifestyle will definitely be thrown off a little bit when you start working, it's definitely great to have a bit of a foundation there which can help ease that adjustment period and help you pick up those habits even easier when you're working. But at the same time, if you're already a lawyer, it's definitely possible and not too late to start building in small changes to try to develop these habits as well, with the key being on the word small. We're firm believers that solid habits are built through repetition and not intensity, so we definitely advocate for small, manageable changes that, when done over time, can lead to really solid habits being built.
And finally, it's important to remember that there are many career options after you graduate from law school, and you don't have to be a lawyer after getting a law degree. In law school, it can feel like the most obvious next step is to become a lawyer after graduation. I think a contributing factor to this is the fact that you're naturally surrounded by people who are all trying to become lawyers and are focused on getting those law firm internships and job offers. However, in the 6 to 7 years that have passed since Lloyd and I finished law school, we've watched numerous friends and classmates move into alternative careers successfully. And I think this serves as a good reminder that a lot of the skills you learn in law school are actually very transferable and useful for many other careers that aren't directly related to law. For instance, in law school, we're taught analytical reasoning skills, problem solving based on sets of facts and rules, and how to assess the strengths and weaknesses of multiple positions. On top of that, we're also taught how to write in a relatively clear, concise, and logical manner. Being a lawyer is definitely not the only profession that benefits from skills like these. Our friends and classmates who pursued alternative careers have moved into a wide range of other industries, including consulting, software engineering, education, and marketing and PR. The same really goes for experience that one gains working as a lawyer too. In Lloyd's case, as a corporate lawyer, he's been able to pick up the basics of all things related to companies and businesses. It is relatively common for corporate lawyers to apply those skills to transition over to roles on the business side of companies. As for me, I found that the skills I picked up after working as a litigation lawyer, particularly when it comes to attention to detail, conflict management, and the ability to analyze strengths and weaknesses, to be all around useful even when making YouTube videos. So, if you're in law school, or even if you've graduated on to working as a lawyer, there's still definitely many paths to explore that can make use of your skill set and experience. As always, thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you want to see more, check out this video on the pros and cons of being a lawyer, and check out this video for a video that the YouTube algorithm thinks that you'll like.